Okay, so we are ready now for checking our work on our final graph/map interpretation in our study of climate change, or you could say global warming. And so our big key question is, who's contributing this carbon dioxide? So we understand now that carbon dioxide has the ability to trap heat because it can absorb infrared photons. That's the scientific way to say trap heat. And so we also are understanding that burning fossil fuels produces CO2, almost pure carbon dioxide. Um, and so we know that burning fossil fuels is leading to this increase in global temperature. So now we want to know, where is it coming from? And so when you were on the map view and you hit the top 5 contributors of carbon dioxide, you saw this pop up, okay? But then when you switch to amount of carbon dioxide per person, the map looked a little different. Okay, and so you were really comparing the size of the circles, but I asked you to gather the exact data. So take a moment to check your work on the first chart. So these are in order not by carbon dioxide per person, but by just the pure amount, the metric tons of carbon dioxide that country produces. And you can see that China is clearly in first place with over 10,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. The US is in second place with over 5,000. And by the way, I don't know that this is an award that you want to win thinking about the environment. India is over 2,000, Russia over 1,000, and Japan just a little bit over 1,000. So you should have been able to find those numbers just by hovering over these circles on the first map before you switched it to tons of carbon dioxide per person. You also were able to locate the population that way. And so keep this in mind. When you see 10 digits here, that's getting in the billions. So there are about 1.5 billion Chinese citizens. And if you look at India, they're not far behind with about 1.3, 1.4 billion citizens. So then you look at the populations of the US, Russia, and Japan, the other top producers. We have close to 333 million, but we are not anywhere near billion. And then you can see Russia and Japan are at 145 million-ish and then 126 million. So when we change to the tons of carbon dioxide per person, you can see that the places don't hold up anymore. So if you were going to arrange this by tons of carbon dioxide per person, think about which country would be in first place, and it is definitely us, followed by Russia, then Japan. China is fourth out of these 5 countries in carbon dioxide per person, and India is a distant fifth. So your next step on this was to actually watch. Do you remember how you pushed play and you could see how the top 5 places in total carbon dioxide changed over time? So if we look at the beginning, I took snapshots at different spots. In 1960, you see it went the United States, Russia, China, Japan, India. But then by 1992, you see that's the flip. China had taken over Russia in second place. Japan and India stayed where they were. Then in 2007, there were some major changes by that time. China became the world's leading producer of carbon dioxide emissions, and the United States flipped to second. Plus, you also notice down here, Japan went to fifth, where India went to fourth. So we see India and China moving up over time, in the United States getting in second place, Russia and Japan falling down a bit. And by the most recent data on this website, so 2019, we see graphically the numbers that you typed here for the total amount of carbon dioxide, and it's really not even close. China is producing way more carbon dioxide per person than any other country. Okay, so the things that you might have said, and I believe I only had you do 3, so I typed 5 here. You can have any of these. What changes do you notice? That, well, the United States was first in carbon dioxide emissions for a long time, so we have not always been in second place. Russia used to be second. They've dropped down. We've seen India's carbon dioxide emissions. Emissions, by the way, just means like given off, right? Emitted into the atmosphere. Russia's emissions India's have increased over time. Russia's have dropped over time from second to fourth. And China moved from third to first over time. These are all changes that we notice. Again, you don't have to have all 5 of those. I believe I had you do 3. Now, the final questions here I think are super important. So I have heard adults just in my socialization say that China's to blame for global warming and it should be their problem to deal with. And so I think there's something in this lesson that supports that claim. And right here it is. Well, China does create the most carbon dioxide. So when people are like, it's China's issue, China's to blame, you can look at this graph and be like, yeah, I kind of agree with you. So then I want us to be thoughtful about this. I think there's something in today's lesson you could use to reject that claim and say that is really not the case. And to me, I think it's carbon dioxide per person. China is creating much less carbon dioxide per person compared to the US and Japan. And let's look at that graphically, right? So here's China's bubble for the amount of carbon dioxide they produce, but here's China's bubble for the amount per person. It's smaller than our bubble, Russia's bubble, and Japan's bubble per person. Okay, so it's like we almost have conflicting data about China. So I asked you to select what you thought was the most important statistic when it comes to global warming. And I'm going to ask you to change it if you put total tons of carbon dioxide. I am confident that the tons of carbon dioxide per person is the metric that really should matter more. And so defending that answer, when you divide by population, remember per means divide, you can tell if the country's making its fair share, right? So we are not anywhere close to first in population, but per person, we are making a lot of carbon dioxide. And that really shows you who is responsible in terms of the decision making and the energy resources that we are using. Now, oh gosh, I think maybe I left something off. I did, I think. Hang on just a second. So I figured out what I did wrong, and I'm sorry about that. I forgot to go over the first critical thinking question. So if you can go back to that, these were the things that we noticed, and you probably just had 3 of them about changes over time. And this is actually a really important question. Why could a country's carbon dioxide emissions change over time? And honestly, this is really the reason for China and India. They've had an increase in development in their country. By that, I mean they've gone from third world to more developed countries. And so that leads to a burning of fossil fuels with industrialization. But why might a country drop? And maybe that country is burning less fossil fuels because they're transitioning to other energy resources, or they're finding technologies to make those resources more fuel efficient. So again, I apologize for that going out of order there.